Welcome to Together Unprocessed, where five friends from across the world share real conversations about food, healing, and life. Let's get started.
Okay, hello everyone. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about some of the main challenges, myths that come up when anyone is considering doing the carnivore diet. You may be asking these questions yourself. You may have people ask them of you. You might hear them from health professionals, which is a tricky area to navigate. And so we thought we'd give you our perspective on where our research has taken us to with regards to some of the most common myths about the carnivore diet. So without further ado, we're going to start with our first one, the biggest one, which is saturated fat. So is saturated fat bad for you? Can it cause you to gain weight? Can it put your bad cholesterol up and put you at risk of a heart attack? And is it generally not a good thing? So who would like to chip in on their views on saturated fat? Because this diet, carnivore diet, it's fairly high fat diet. It's not necessarily always high in protein. You can put the fat and protein up and down depending on what works for you, but it's certainly higher fat than what we would be generally recommended to have. So yeah. Anyone want to go first?
Go ahead, Hugo.
Okay. Well, my perspective is that our bodies naturally produce saturated fat and all those lipoproteins, the cholesterol that we need, but we also need it from the diet. And if these things were truly harmful, evolutionarily, we wouldn't be producing it right now. It would be eliminated from the genome. We wouldn't produce cholesterol or saturated fat. And we should just be without it, because if it's harmful, it will be eliminated from the population. But that's clearly not the case. I believe saturated fat and cholesterol is essential. And increasing my red meat intake and other animal foods has given me health and made me feel better than I ever have. So that's a short summary of my position on saturated fat, but we can go deeper.
Thanks, Hugo. Anyone else want to chip in? Because we can go deeper on all of those points, I think.
I think I don't remember who I think it was Dr. Chafee talked about this, how our brains need cholesterol and our body naturally produces it to make us run more like a well-oiled machine. And one of the things that people don't understand is what uses cholesterol in our body. And when you break it all down, everything. But our body produces it. And what happens when we mix in seed oils? What happens then?
Yes, talking about where cholesterol is being used. Cholesterol is so important that it is in all of your cells. It makes up 30-40% of the weight of the cell membrane, so it's a huge part of it. It's comparative to protein in your cell membranes. It is that important. It retains flexibility of the membrane and the proper transfer of molecules in and outside the cell. It has so many uses, and plus you have organelles like the mitochondria, the nucleus, lysosomes, everything inside the cell uses a membrane, and it has cholesterol as well. So it has a widespread use, and your brain cells, the myelin sheets, the axons you have, those are made out of cholesterol. So you need it for proper functioning. And there are so many other uses, such as vitamin D generation via sunlight. You need cholesterol under your skin to convert that into vitamin D using sunlight. So this is just a couple of examples, but this is a key molecule across biology. It's not just humans. It's an ancient molecule that has been around for at least a few billion years, if not more.
Hmm.
So it's
Only.
important. And it hasn't changed structure.
Yeah.
It's been the same.
And so what part of our body, makes cholesterol?
The liver. But you also your brain makes cholesterol. So oddly enough, it doesn't, from what I understand, it doesn't bypass the blood-brain barrier. But you have generation of cholesterol, the synthesis inside the brain. Oddly enough, you have fatty acids that can bypass the blood-brain barrier. And yeah, and that connects with seed oils as well, which we can talk about later.
Yeah. Thanks, Hugo. Do you have anything to add, Ash?
No, I think that pretty much covered it. Hugo's more scientific with all that. So I just, with saturated fat, I just know that it's, for me, look at the layman's term, and it's, since I've been eating more fats, I don't feel the things that I used to do when I had the seed oil. So I just, to me, that's the, when you actually, using it in your body and everything, that's the actual true tell, and we're busy reading that book, doing a book now in book club, and I'm learning a lot more about the different oils. And yeah, I think we taught to, saturated fat has been so demonized, and you don't realize the minerals and the vitamins and everything that are actually in all of the, in the saturated fat that you actually need and are getting, which you're not getting from all these other oils that you are then taught are the ones that are the ones that we should be having, when there's actually no nutritional value in them except for toxins.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of people think the Mediterranean diet is the best diet, because it tends to focus more on the kind of mono and polyunsaturated fats. And we think that that's, there's omega-6s are the best, and the EHA and the DPA, but there's so much more in saturated fats that comes as well as having those particular fatty acids. Which I always think is interesting, because it's not considered essential nutrient to have anything more than a piece of salmon. But actually, there's so many micronutrients in saturated fat, probably more than we realize that we need. And I think there was actually a study quite recently which identified a new molecule that you only get in saturated fat that we actually do need, and maybe at some point considered essential. So by constantly staying away from saturated fat and tending towards more polyunsaturated or monounsaturated fats, we're missing nutrients. So it's not just that it is not bad, it's actually that we need it and it's good. And I think our personal testimonies would endorse that. Like, I feel I can tell the difference when I eat a piece of salmon versus when I eat a fatty steak. And it's worlds apart in terms of how nourished I feel and how satiated I feel. And when you feel connected to your own kind of body and what you've eaten and what it's doing for you, you will notice that very, very quickly. Like, I can't ever get satiated on eating a piece of salmon as much as I love it, and I can even put it in butter, but it doesn't have the same feeling of that I've just nourished my body as having ruminant fatty meat does. So there is something in there that is doing something that maybe we can't even identify with science right now, but common sense has to come into play, which is that we have always eaten those foods, so they can't be harmful and they're probably good. And that's a good kind of benchmark, I think, to kind of work our way through these kind of contradictions that we hear about. Can you go?
Regarding the study, was it C15?
I think so, yeah.
The fatty acid, pentadecanoic acid,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one. Did you know any
I'm
more?
not
Want to add any
surprised.
more on that?
Not that much, I just know dairy has more of that acid usually, but that doesn't mean, dairy is better than meat. It's just one thing that we've found, and it's also in red meat anyway. So if you're
Yeah.
eating animal food, you're gonna get that, and we shouldn't be surprised if we're going to find a lot more micronutrients that are essential for optimal health in the future.
Yeah. Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
also, when people talk about saturated fat and meat containing saturated fat, it's not 100% saturated fat. Usually it's about 50% saturated fat, rest being monounsaturated, 48%, and just 1 or 2% being omega 3s and omega 6s. So
Yeah.
And monounsaturated fats are touted as heart healthy, so I think that's an interesting point that a lot of
Yeah.
Is
people
that
miss.
reference to beef, Hugo, or is that all
Beef and
meats?
lamb, beef and lamb.
Beef
It
and lamb,
doesn't
okay.
it doesn't exactly apply to pork. It depends on the diet. But beef and lamb and other ruminants, they usually have that composition. That's pretty close.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing is that I think you said earlier, Hugo, that our body makes cholesterol, and I don't believe that our body would make something that was harmful. But the challenge that you will get when you say that is, well, if your body makes cholesterol, then you don't need to eat it, then, do you? Because the body is capable of making its own cholesterol. It's kind of like what we say about glucose. So I think that's an interesting one. Does anyone want to reply to that point? Because our body does make cholesterol in the cells where it's needed. So I think
I
there's
would
only two
reply to
organs
that.
that don't make their own cholesterol.
I would reply to that because it's more of a burden on the liver if it has to generate all the cholesterol it needs, and probably can't even meet the requirements of the entire body. I believe it's a survival mechanism in case we don't have animal foods and we have to rely on plants. Since we need cholesterol to function, and if we don't have production of it, we will have serious issues. But it's different from glucose because glucose is actually, there's very little regulation of it. Once you ingest that, your body has to react to the glucose. In terms of cholesterol, it can just, you can just excrete it via bowels or mostly, and it's not a problem. Your body has mechanisms to regulate that, but it doesn't have mechanisms for sugar. It can only influence appetite, and that's a poor way of, stopping a person from eating carbohydrates. So it doesn't really work that well. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So that, but
So
yeah, that's that.
go ahead,
Go
Libby.
ahead,
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so when you talk about that, as in our body produces it or whatever, and you go into what we call the starvation mode, like back in the day when they're chasing the mammoth and stuff, and hanging off the tusk and trying to spear it. I mean, they needed food, even though our body produces it. It's not long term. You do need nourishment, and I think that's the question: is what is the optimal nourishment? And we talked about what was I going to say now? I forgot what I was going to say. That's part of what I was going to say, anyways. I'll leave it at that. It's
I think there are
I
studies.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, and we'll link any study we make reference or whatever. We'll definitely link below that you can go check them out for yourself as well. Yeah, it's like people perish because they don't eat and they don't get nourishment. So you do need food, but what is the appropriate food to put into your body to be at optimal health so that you can perform every single day at your best? Saturated fat, we found, is a big one. Huge.
Yeah. And what you said, Hugo, about if you overeat fat, it doesn't necessarily cause a problem in your body. And it leads us on to this point that people think about fat, which is that fat makes you fat. So the more fat you eat, the fatter you're going to get. Now, I think there is maybe we push back on that too strongly sometimes, because I do think if you were to sit down and overeat fat, then you would store some of that. And there's obviously some regulation, as I see it, throughout your body to stop you from doing that, which is that you don't feel good eating more fat than you need. Your body will immediately tell you, oh, that's too much. It won't taste good. It won't feel like something you want to eat. And then your gut will kick in and it won't absorb as much as you're eating, because you have a limited amount of bile that will absorb it. So most of it will end up getting passed through, and you'll know it when you go to the toilet if you're overeating fat. So what does get through? Could that make you fat is the question. As opposed to glucose. What do we think?
There's a mechanism for that. Fat is an essential nutrient, and if you get that in the wild, it's crucial. Protein is important as well, but fat is the main energy source. You can't really use protein, and you know the human body has a lot of capacity to store fat, and I don't think you can become overweight if you eat too much fat, because your body will be regulating that via bile and other mechanisms. Bile being the limiting factor. And
Look at the Inuit.
there are
Let's just
people
take
who
the
get
Inuit.
yeah. There are people who get fatter with eating more fat, and that's okay. And I think that makes sense evolutionarily. Like if you have a surplus of fat in your food, then the body stores it. It doesn't throw it all away in case of starvation. So in that perspective, I think it makes sense, and maybe it's worth, reducing a little bit of that fat depending on how much you eat. So it's a case by case basis, but in general, you should eat quite a bit of fat.
Yeah. And if your body's trying to store fat more than what, we also have in our minds a picture of what, the right kind of muscle to fat ratio is in terms of body composition. And that's not necessarily what our body wants. Like to survive, we'd probably look not the same as what we see in magazines. And therefore we're aspiring to something that isn't really realistic, isn't what evolution is, is optimal for evolution. So yeah, we probably, if we just ate to our own appetite level of fat and nothing else, could you still be overweight? Yes, I think you could, but I think that's what evolution wants. I don't think you would be at risk of harm, and I don't think you'd be, obese, but yeah, probably not the body composition you ideally want. So that's where I think there's a bit of a gray area that people maybe need to understand a little bit more, bit of a nuance there. Kim?
I don't think. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Hugo.
I'm not convinced that anyone can become overweight by eating too much fat. I think it can increase weight from your optimal or range, but then again, what is optimal, right? So who defines that? We don't have the tools for that, and your body knows best, right? So
Yeah.
is it really overweight if you have 12-15% body fat? It depends on your gender and lifestyle, stress, all of those things. It's not just the fat you're eating.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's exactly what I was going to hit on is like, I think storing fat, like biologically, we really don't know the definitive answer. We really don't. It's one of those things that is still is trying to be figured out. Also too, like survival mode, women naturally store more fat than men. They just do. I mean, it's that winter thing. We have children and all this other kind of stuff. And just like Hugo said, like what is, and I love how some of the influencers talk about this, is what is optimal. Like, do you need to be at 5% body fat? I mean, some argue that that's not good. That's not healthy for you. And like, is 10%, is 20%, is 15%? What is the optimal? And I think that's all up in the air right now because we don't really have the answer. We have some stuff that points to, hey, this is really healthy or whatever, but what are the numbers? We have no idea. We really don't. What we do know is that if you're eating garbage, like chips and stuff, and all of a sudden your fat cells are like this and you're huge, that's not healthy. That we do know 100%. So it's like, for myself, this is one of my biggest contentions. Olivia can attest to it. All of you guys, Ashley, Hugo, I am so bitchy when I come to is my body will not release fat, and I have not lost a ton of fat. When I did in the beginning, I did, and then I stalled out, and then I gained 12 pounds, and now I'm kind of at the same thing, but my blood tests tell a whole different story. So, I mean, to me, sorry, Livia.
Like what? Like, are you going to say what your blood tests have shown?
Well, that's going to say is my blood tests tell me that I'm doing amazing and I'm getting healthier and healthier and healthier, even though I carry so much fat on my body. So I'm going to lean towards my blood tests.
Also, you have I think you have a condition that was before carnivore.
Yes, my thyroid.
That's affecting that. It's not
Yeah.
because you're
And I think
overeating fat. I don't think that's the issue. a lot of people don't realize that it's not the fat you're eating. It's probably some other health condition you have that you're not
Mhm.
aware.
But also
Mm.
think coming to carnivore from when you started, you so used to this other way of doing things where you might have been low fat or where they've taken all the fat out and replaced it with sugars, or you've done all these different things. So I think the biggest thing as well, because we taught to fear fat so much, that I think that's where I struggled with when I first started was how much is the correct amount? Because I thought I was eating enough fat. I thought I was replacing with what I was eating and adding in all this stuff, but I wasn't eating near the amount that I was. So I did stop putting on weight because I was still eating too lean. And yes, I started replacing the things, the sugars with the fats, or even the seed oils. When you got the seed oil and the sugar combination, that's sort of started all the damage of the years and years of doing all these different things, like you were saying, with the damage before you even come in with any autoimmune diseases that you might have or anything. And it's going to take, you've done years and years of damage, so it's going to take time, and it's going to take time to get used to having saturated fat again, to realize it's not bad for you, that it does have all these vitamins and it does have all the health benefits, that it's not as toxic like all the other oils are, because that's a big one to overcome, because it's all those other seed oils are in everything that everybody eats. Just it's a big thing with my daughters, that I'm teaching them to have all this fat, and they're going to school and they're getting a different story from all their friends, and then they're like, well, they're scared that fat's going to make them fat, and it's trying to get that whole thing taught to them, and that's the hardest part, is understanding that it's not, with these myths, because they've been drummed into us over our lives. I'm in my 40s, it's been what's been drummed in. So when the minute you try and change it, you do get the pushback, you do get the doctors saying, no, don't do this, don't do that, because it's the first thing is, oh, your cholesterol, and that's not what I'm worried about. It's all the other things of, if you're diabetic and you're going to have a heart attack, it's not from the cholesterol, it's from the damage you've done from the sugar, or all that stuff. Sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Hugo?
Regarding the fat intake, I also struggled with that in the very first month. I didn't know the proper ratio, and I had fatigue and energy issues. So when I increased my fat, that's when I felt better. I recommend people who don't intuitively know how much fat to intake, maybe use a kitchen scale, measure fat, and if you have lean protein, you can make the fat to protein ratio as you like, and try that for people who are struggling with energy issues and fatigue after they've passed the second or third week. That's when you should be having more energy. You shouldn't have the transition symptoms anymore.
Yeah, or you might need some salt as well, another possibility. But definitely on fat, I think people will, as you both said, Hugo and Ash, that people are coming from a place where we're having to really unlearn the most fundamental aspects of nutrition that we've all thought all this time, and that's a hard thing to do. And so people will start with very small amounts of fat and still not feel great on carnivore. And I think the best thing you can do in carnivore is just eat as much fat as you can in terms of what your appetite is telling you to, and then scale it back from there if you think that's too much. Like you more than likely have to overcome some healing of your metabolism, and fat's going to be the best way to do that. Or it could be healing of your gut, or it could be other issues, but you're going to need the fat in the beginning to get you going. You can always bring it down later. So don't fear the fat, just go for it no matter what else is happening, just eat the fat, and everything will then start to equalize and normalize over time. So last question on fat is, and you guys touched on it in terms of blood. So the most common question I see, like on these kind of carnivore Facebook groups, is, I'm really enjoying carnivore and I feel better, and I'm like, my weight has come down, and my mental health has improved, but my cholesterol has gone up. So what should I do now? Should I just go back and just eat the way I was, or what should I do about this cholesterol issue? So what would you say to people who are immediately worried about their cholesterol, or may have had some kind of heart issue in the past, and therefore they think they're in a different category because they can't afford for their cholesterol to go up in particular? Any thoughts on that? Kim, were you going to say something?
I have lots of thoughts on that. And I mean, that's one of the things that used to scare the pants off me. I mean, it was when those numbers started going up and stuff, it was like, okay, what the hell's going on? But through education, what we've learned over the years, it's the last thing we should be concerned about. And one of the things that we learned was the HDL and triglycerides are more of a gauge of what's happening in your body than just your cholesterol. And also we talked about so many other things with that too, like, how do we bring it down, and why would we bring it down? Well, you don't. If you're eating the proper human diet, or the optimal, I won't call it human diet, I'll call it the optimal diet or way of eating, cholesterol is the last thing people need to be worried about. And this whole push, like, do statins, do this, do that, or whatever. There's influencers out there and there's scientists out there. Nick Norwitz comes to mind, eating, all he did was eat Oreo cookies, and he lowered his cholesterol below what any statin could ever do. So that's all I'm going to say is, like, cholesterol, I don't think we should worry about it. If it gets extremely high, like you get into the 500, 600, 700s, well, maybe you'll have to look at it and say, what am I eating? And maybe take a look at it then. But when they go up, drastically, they can. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kim. Hugo?
Regarding cholesterol being too high, there was a case of true hypercholesteremia. Body was producing too much cholesterol in that person, and it just exuded out of his skin, his bowels, and it was uncomfortable, I guess, for that person, but it didn't seem to kill him, which is a testament that how safe cholesterol actually is.
So what are you saying, that it can exude out of your pores and it's okay?
Apparently can, if you have too much of it, because there was a case study of that person, and they had cholesterol coming out of the skin, but he didn't seem to have any critical health issue other than just the discomfort of having cholesterol come out of your skin, which is, I guess, not pleasant, and it would make everyday life pretty hard. But at least it's, it seems quite safe. I think it's probably one of the safest molecules here.
I wish I could go back to when we read Dr. Malcolm Kendrick's book, and Olivia, this is where you could go deeper into it. And I can't remember all of it, but when he explained cholesterol, and then I talked to you guys and said, what does this mean? It's like right then and there, when we read that book, the clot thickens. My fear of cholesterol was gone. It was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that has come about, and we've almost like added one and one together, made 50,000 on cholesterol. Like we've opened up a clot and we've seen some cholesterol in there alongside many other molecules, and then have said, well, it has to be that. And we ignore the fact that there's many better risk markers for heart disease than LDL cholesterol. We ignore the fact that, as you said, Kim, triglycerides and HDL, there's CRP or inflammation markers, fasting insulin, all of that stuff is much more likely to be something you should be concerned about if you're worried about heart disease than your cholesterol number. But yet we obsess about the cholesterol number, probably because there's a drug that addresses cholesterol and not one to address the others. So, if you really want to be scientific about it, you would just say, well, let me think about my inflammation. Let me think about my homocysteine is another one. And see whether or not those are concerning. Because it's not to say you shouldn't worry about anything on the carnivore diet. You should worry about the things which actually do associate more highly with some of these diseases, and keep an eye on those. And they should get better as you take, you go on a diet which reduces inflammation generally. So that's what I would say to anyone is, like, it's not that you should just ignore your cholesterol number, just look at the other numbers. Go and listen to Paul Mason. He explains it really well in terms of where your band should be between your triglycerides and HDL, and then decide whether or not you have any concern about heart disease or any other disease. So I think that's covered cholesterol pretty well. Shall we move on to fiber? So that's the other big one on the carnivore diet is, well, you can't be carnivore because you need to have fiber. Everybody needs to have fiber. You need it because you need your gut to move your stool along, otherwise you'll get constipated. Or you need it because it provides nutrition for your gut itself. And because plants are good. Plants have nutrients in them, and that's very good for you. Lots of different nutrients come from plants that we need. So, who would like to start us off on fiber? Go on, Hugo.
We all are like, okay.
Okay, fine. Fine. Fiber.
Okay, hands up anyone who
How
felt
do I say?
worse taking out fiber.
Well, obviously, fiber it cannot be essential because as carnivores, we haven't. If you're strict about carnivore, you don't eat any fiber, and we do it for years or decades even. There are examples. Those people are extremely healthy. They
Yeah.
have good microbiomes when compared to the standard population, one of the healthiest you can get. So I think that argument falls flat on its face. People just ignore other mechanisms, or doctors should be more educated on this topic, but they aren't, and people use doctors as a source of truth and rely upon them, and it's unfortunately not good because doctors have very little understanding of nutrition and even human body, which is surprising because they should be aware of those things, especially physiology. It's like 101. They should be aware of that, but they really aren't. So fiber is not essential, and a lot of the benefits, there are benefits you get with fiber when you're eating carbohydrates, such as you don't get as much nutrients out of the food you're eating, but then again, you're losing those nutrients, right? So it's not all good with fiber, and
Yeah.
it reduces the rate of absorption as well, which is good for dampening those glucose spikes. That's why processed sugar, all of that is extremely bad because it spikes your insulin immediately and your blood glucose. So there is benefit in fiber when you're eating omnivore foods, carbohydrates. It's actually better if you have that fiber when you're eating those foods. But if you are eating a carnivorous diet, then you shouldn't touch fiber. It's just gonna lessen the nutrients you get, and it can cause issues as well, which we can talk about.
Yeah. So if you're eating the right thing to start with, then you don't want anything to block it. If you're eating the wrong thing to start with, then you need fiber to block it getting into your system.
Exactly.
So the better option is to eat the right thing to start with, and then you don't need anything to be blocked in general, and you can get the
That
benefit
would
of
be
having.
the common sense answer. Yeah, just common sense. Not so
Yeah,
common anymore.
no, that's true. So yeah, so in terms of constipation, I think this is where cholesterol and fiber are very interrelated, because the reason we're so obsessed with fiber is because we dropped the fat, and we had to figure out a way once we demonized fat to ensure people could get food going in their body through their body, which normally fat facilitates. So because we dropped the fat, we then suddenly started to worship fiber, and that's really where it started in the kind of 80s time, and the fiber and what we think in our minds, that from a constipation point of view, the fiber is what's going to stop us being constipated. What it's actually doing is bulking us up and giving us more stool to pass through that doesn't give us any nutrients, and means that we have much, more regular stool than we even need, because we're just passing out, bulk that we don't actually need. So I think the two are very related, and I'd say you do not need it, as we can all be testament to actually have regular stools. And regular stools are just whatever waste you have, which may not be very much and may not be regular in the way that we normally think about it, which is daily. It can be up to 1 week. It's whatever you need to get rid of. So constipation is not about regularity. It's about the consistency of your stool. And if your stool is coming out in a way which is comfortable, you don't have anything to worry about. If it's not, then you either need to reduce your fat or increase your fat. But it's in no way do you need fiber to help that. Here you go.
Yeah. Regarding constipation, I have been constipated on carnivore, sometimes, but it's because of lack of fat. When I eat too lean, I get constipated, and it's not pleasant. So
No.
that's the only time. I haven't been constipated by anything else. I always know what caused it. It's just not
Mhm.
eating enough fat, and that's it. I just eat more fat, and I have no issue. So
Yep.
there is constipation on carnivore, but that happens when you're eating too little fat.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. I agree with Hugo on that, on what he was saying of that, because at the times that I have been, it's either that or hydration. I haven't drunk enough water. So it's for me personally, it's the combination of, yes, I've been eating too lean or I haven't been drinking enough water. Those are the two times when the few times that I have, I've realized, oh, well, I've been eating very lean, or so I haven't been having the fat, or yeah. So that's the two things for me. And I know my body really well now. And so I think that's one thing you do learn on the carnivore way is you learn to read your body really well, as to know what's going on, what foods are causing inflammation, what foods aren't, and that sort of thing. And that's why I also tend to stick to beef and lamb.
I mean, our
Yeah.
bodies are intelligent, right? So if you don't have enough hydration, it's not gonna excrete that via stools, right? You're probably gonna get constipated. So I think it all makes sense.
Yep. Kim?
Yeah, when we talk about, well, first of all, we haven't even talked about the damage the fiber does, because people, they don't just get it from their vegetables or fruit. They'll take it in Metamucil. They take it in all these other things that are put out there because it's the best for you. But also too, when I'm talking to people, or they're talking to me, I don't talk anymore. It's like people want to come to me, then I talk, because I was a very almost pounding on it and had to draw myself back. It's like, whoa, Kim, like, slow your horses. And it's like, so one of the things I asked him, I said, when you go to the bathroom and you have a bowel movement, what is your body doing? And most of them always say, well, they're just getting rid of the waste in my body. And I said, so if you're going 2, 3, 4 times a day, what's your body doing? And then all of a sudden, they'll think about it, and then all of a sudden, because, well, I have IBS, or there's something else wrong with my body. It's not the food that I'm putting in it. And there always seems to be an excuse. So even when you go to your doctor about it, what do they test you on? They don't ask you, what are you eating? They'll ask you, like, okay, how many times do you go, and all this kind of, and then they start doing the tests, and they want to put a label on it so that they can identify it and rectify it, which it never is. And all along, it's what you're putting in your body. I mean, the oldest carnivore is Maggie, who's a farmer here in Canada. She's 83 years old now, and she's been a carnivore for over 60 years. And when you look at her, look her up. Look her up. She doesn't look a day older than 40. Amazing. So yeah, I mean, fiber is such a fallacy. It needs to be addressed 100%.
Yeah. Here you go.
Fiber is such a contentious issue for me because I personally endured so much stress and issues with fiber that I mean, I came from a background of IBS and IBD, and it went to that point where it became so severe I couldn't function normally. I would go to the bathroom 7, 8 times per day, and total time would be 3, 4 hours, and it would be excruciating. Seed oils would make it worse, but it was the fiber as well. It was just causing me so many symptoms: stomach cramps, constipation, pain, and bleeding as well. And yeah, it's not until I removed the fiber when carnivore that resolved. It took me 3 to 4 days of carnivore to have extreme relief.
Wow.
I stopped 70% of my symptoms, 70 to 80%. So
Yeah.
it usually takes people a while to reverse their health conditions, but that reversed pretty quickly. I mean, of course, it took me many months, even a year, I'd say 1.5 years to completely resolve my gut issues. But at least I was heading that way, and now my gut is just extremely good, and it's really resilient as well, since I've experimented with some foods and I don't have that reaction anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Like
many.
apples off your grandma's tree. Sorry, Livia.
Again, Tim?
I said like apples off his grandma's tree.
That didn't really affect my digestion that much, but it was mostly energy issues, right? Fatigue and all of that, which is a good sign, of course. You know, that fiber it's not as damaging anymore. So I actually did heal my gut to a point where I
So-
never had it. I've always had issues with my gut ever since I was 2 years old, or even younger.
So when you were going through all this, just before you went, sorry, Livia, I wanted to get this question in. Just before you went through all this, Hugo, all that you were going through, like on the bathroom all the time or whatever, what did you relate that to? What was your reasoning in your mind as you're starting to dissect it? Because you're very good at that. Like, what did you think was the cause of that?
Yeah, that's where I went down the rabbit hole. I didn't think it was normal. I felt it was abnormal. You know, that other people aren't experiencing what I'm experiencing, and I tried to find reasons for that. I looked into so many different things. I thought maybe I have a genetic condition, maybe I have some lingering health issue from somewhere else. I looked at so many ways, but I didn't look at diet enough. But I always kept meat in my diet. And, you know, even though I heard a lot of propaganda about red meat causing issues and being bad, I didn't fall for it. So I kept eating that. But I did change my diet bit by bit. So I tried lowering my fiber intake, but that wasn't intentional. I didn't intentionally reduce the fiber. I didn't have that in my mind, but I ate foods that had less fiber, and I got some benefit from that. So subconsciously, maybe I already knew the difference, you know, where it was coming from, but consciously I wasn't aware of those choices. I was just starting to consume more meat, and I felt better as I went. And eventually I found some great sources like Sten Ekberg and Dr. Paul Mason, who really took me down the rabbit hole, you know, and towards this health journey. And yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. And I think yours is one of so many stories, Hugo, that are people who have solved gut issues, whether it's Crohn's, IBS, ulcerative colitis, and so many others. They seem to disappear. And I didn't even have any gut issues, but one of the biggest things I noticed was you don't have that feeling of knowing what's going on with your digestion. Like before, when I ate fiber, I was always aware of what was going on in my gut, you know, whether I just ate or a few hours ago, but you kind of sense it and feel it. And now it's almost like you eat something and you throw it down a garbage chute in a weird way. Like it's nothing to do with you what happens until it comes out the other end. And you just don't know you don't have any feeling. Everything gets absorbed and everything just passes through, and there's no need to kind of engage you and tell you what's going on down there. It's just it's gone into an abyss where it's working properly. So now I'm much more sensitive to something in my gut because I think, oh, I'm not used to feeling anything going on in my gut. So I think there's loads of telltale signs like that. And the other thing on fiber is that people think that you need it to feed your actual gut. So we have this whole era we're going through right now where the gut microbiome is seen as something we need to achieve to a certain degree. We don't really understand all the science of it yet, but we seem to be of the thinking that eating more plants gives you a more varied gut microbiome and the bacteria variety that you have in it. So what do we think about that? Because one of the main things that people think plants help the gut with is to produce, well, it does produce short-chain fatty acids, which helps feed the gut. So is that an important aspect we're missing out on as carnivores? Kim?
Yeah, that's so there's a lot of there are some influencers out there that you know, they don't promote plants at all, but they talk about fermented plants. You know, when you get into like sauerkraut and stuff like that for the microbiome, and even ours, Dr. Chafee as well, like he'll say, yeah, like have some yogurt, you know, but chew it with the food and stuff. So, I mean, all the years that we've been eating horrible, our gut needs help. And carnivore isn't always going to correct that right away. And sometimes you need health or help. So how do you do that? And one of the things that I found, you know, from watching and reading and all that kind of stuff is fermented food. So yes, you can have a plant, but make sure it's the right one. And one of the biggest things that's promoted is fermented foods like yogurt, like kefir, like sauerkraut. Dr. Sean O'Mar is huge on that. And I did his thing too, and I think it really helped me a lot as well. So yeah, that's where I stand on that.
I've got something to say about with plants. I know a lot of plant, you know, when you're eating a lot of different ones that you do eat, even when you eat them and they're going in your gut, you're not getting the nutrients because our body's not designed to break them down. So unless you're actually eating an enzyme with your food to help break down that food, you're not going to be getting a lot of the nutrients that you think you're getting because it's not in the form that is readily absorbable in our bodies. So yes, for eating fermented stuff definitely does help because it is already sort of pre-digested. So, you know, it's in that form where your body is going to be able to absorb it. Personally, I do a lot of fermenting myself, as Kim was talking about. So the way that I know that I'm feeding my gut microbiome is I drink more kefir. I make fermented butter, so that I'm not just having normal butter. I actually do the fermented butter. You know, I eat the blue cheeses, and all of that again is with your food too, because a certain amount obviously will die off with your stomach acid, but the majority of it will get through your stomach as well. But yeah, there's all the different, you know, things that you can do. So even if you're going to be eating fruit, you know, there's so many different ways to ferment. You can ferment the fruit if you're wanting to stick with a few berries and things, ferment it because you get then getting rid of the, you know, that sugar and all that in it and the things that you're not wanting so that it's already pre-digested. And that's what I do for my kids. You know, they have sauerkraut, you know, I'm starting to make fermented fruit. They have the kombucha, all that sort of stuff that I make at home. At least I know then what they're eating is cleaner and it is at least helping them gut microbiome versus having plants that they might not necessarily get all the nutrients from.
Yeah. And even with your dog, even with your dogs and your cat as well, they can benefit, especially if you're feeding something like kibble, which, you know, personally myself, I think is the you may as well just take a ladle and put it in the outhouse, pull it out and give it to your dog because it's garbage, you know. But even your animals, start giving them fermented vegetables and stuff like that. It changes, you know, their microbiome. And another thing too that's huge, and we've laughed many times about it. People will do a fecal transplant because of somebody else's, you know, biome. They want to take it for themselves, and you can, like, I mean, let's talk about this. Like, you know, this is how far it has come to try and correct something that could be corrected with the proper diet. And you know, a lot of that can be corrected with ingesting fermented foods.
Yeah. I think the fermented food point is good because well, if you're going to have plants, have them fermented. And then that makes them less bad. But going back to the question about whether or not short chain fatty acids are needed from plants to actually feed our gut, and which is not about making plants less bad, but just having a healthy gut. Like, do we think that is needed? Because that is one of the main arguments for eating plants. Hugo, do you want to address that one?
Or what that means. Yeah. Fiber gets fermented, broken down by your microbes in your colon, and that in turn gets converted to short chain fatty acids, butyrate being the most important of those. And if you look at sources of butyrate across foods, it's readily found in butter. It's also produced by your own body when you're in ketosis. So you would get the systemic effect. On an omnivore diet, if you're eating fiber, you're only feeding your limited part of your colon. You're not feeding your entire body by those short chain fatty acids. But with a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet, you are having systemic short chain fatty acids all throughout your body. So, and that's part of the reason why carnivores have such healthy gut microbiomes as well, because they are feeding all those cells and those bacteria. So that's why it works that well.
Yeah, I think that's just not understood, because everyone understands that fiber feeds your gut and so therefore you need it, but they don't understand that ketones actually contain all of the equivalent of the short chain fatty acids, which are going to feed your enterocytes from within. So it's just a different mechanism, and it's a better mechanism. So
There's a downside with fiber, right? Fiber fermentation, you get gas, bloating, all those kinds of symptoms. So it's not all good, right? You get a lot
yeah.
of you get benefit, but you get negatives, and people complain about those things.
Yeah.
It is
Well, I
not.
mean, we
It
don't
is.
even know that they're negatives. There's so many anti-nutrients and toxins that are in plants that we just don't even bring into the equation when we're talking and evangelizing how plants are the right food for us. And so it's actually just misinformation really out there. Yes, there are nutrients in plants. Can we get hold of them and actually absorb them, like Ash said? And what are those? What is the mechanism of actually absorbing them when you've got something blocking the nutrients getting in anyway? Why are you setting yourself up to fail by having something that's blocking nutrients getting in your body? Just take them out of the equation. So it doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but people just don't really think about it sometimes. Kim,
We also don't say. Oh, sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Hugo.
We also don't say. We're not saying that plants are wholly bad. They have their uses. It's just that we prefer carnivore animal foods because it's actually optimal, and we don't reduce any nutrients in there. We get the whole package. But
Yeah.
evolutionarily, plants were extremely important, both for medicinal uses and survival.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
berries and all those wild plants, I think, can be okay if you consume them seasonally. It's perfectly fine, depending on where you're coming from and what state you're in. It can be just ancestral and fine. You have to find that for yourself and just try those things, experiment and find answers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When you say we prefer plants, it's not just we, it's human beings. Kim?
Yeah, for sure. And like it's we're not against anything. We're not against vegan. We're not against vegetarian or anything. This is just what we found worked for us. And when it comes down to me, we've read so much and all this other kind of stuff. So short chain fatty acids that people get from plants in my mind when you were talking, Hugo. So is this one of the other reasons why fasting is so beneficial for us, because the ketones and the short chain fatty acids that are on the ketones that start going through our body and regulating? Is that part of it?
Yeah, exactly, and that works for omnivores as well. If you're eating carbohydrates and all those plant foods, you're tapping into that mechanism. It might not feel great because you haven't adapted to that state. But if you do a carnivore or ketogenic diet, that's your default state. That's where you operate most of the time, and you only get out of that state when you're consuming food. And it depends on the person. Some people are still in ketosis and still going
Yeah.
through that process even when they're eating. So it's all
Yeah.
case by case basis.
And even being carnivore, and we can throw keto in here too, but mostly carnivore because that's what we are. I mean, one of the reasons why we find that our gut seems to be okay and we're operating at optimal is, even though if we were to take a blood test and we want to test our ketones, they're very low, but our body is now producing what we need to function within that time frame that we're in. So, and Olivia's done it. I've done it. So many people have, kept checking and like Keto Mojo, all that kind of stuff. And, that's probably why, because there is still ketones in our body, that our guts are healing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get a lot more efficient in producing ketones when you've been fat adapted for a long time. So you won't see your ketones high, but that doesn't mean that you're not nourishing yourself with ketones and they're not in your cells. They're just not in your blood anymore because you don't need to produce as much and waste as much. So it's not always the answer to do your bloods, because it doesn't tell you what your body's actually operating on. So there's that to factor in as well. Okay, so can I move us on from fiber? We've got a few others we want to try and tackle.
Yeah, let's go.
vitamin C. Do we need to have vitamin C through plants? That's the other reason to eat plants, especially citrus fruits and other plants. So how are we all surviving without scurvy right now?
I take so much vitamin C that I'm sitting on the toilet forever. And of course, I'm kidding. You know what? The only time I've ever taken, and I've been carnivore 2.5 years, maybe pushing 3 now, I think November. Anyways, the only time I've ever taken vitamin C is when I felt like I was having a cold. And I just pump it. Like I take 200 or 2,000, if not more. And that's something that I found my body adapts to, that likes it. It helps me. Other than that, I don't think we need it at all, because we get it from what we eat. In particular, liver is a good one, which you don't have to eat, but we still get it. We get it from our beef, and we get it from our diet. And our body doesn't need it as much as if we're eating like an omnivore diet or whatever, where we need more vitamin C. We don't need it when we're carnivore, not as much, not even close.
The reason we don't need it as much is carbohydrates, when it breaks down to glucose, compete with the same receptors as vitamin C. So you can't have as much getting through when you've got glucose in the mix of what your body's trying to absorb. And so we have to put the RDAs up, the recommended daily amounts of vitamin C up, so that it can get through. When you take those glucose competitors out of the equation, we actually don't need as much to be coming in. And what we do need is provided by meat. And that's why I don't know anyone who's had any issues with scurvy since going carnivore, or with their gums. In fact, my gums are way more healthy than they used to be. And it's been disproven. Like, so many people on carnivore for this long would not be able to make it if they were getting any signs of scurvy. So there is obviously an issue with the information that we have on scurvy and vitamin C. Anyone want to add?
What she said.
Okay, I'll move us on from that one. Protein and kidneys. Do we think too much protein is going to harm our kidneys? So
Man,
carnivore is not a high protein diet. It is a moderate protein diet and high fat diet. That's the first thing. And people think that it is a high protein diet because relative to other things, it maybe is higher protein, but it's not a high protein diet in itself. So there's that first fact to throw in there. Anyone want to add to that?
I will. So, oh my God, I was just looking at my dog, and she was like, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a walk. What did we oh yeah, kidney. That is the number one thing I get thrown back at me every single time, especially if it's somebody new, right? And they say like, oh, it's just wrecking your kidneys, and you can't consume that much meat and all this other kind of stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, of the millions and millions and millions of us that are carnivore, I guess we're dying, because it's not true. It's another thing that was like we bought into hook, line, and sinker, and especially the older generation, the baby boomers, like that are older than us, they will not let that go. Even though you show them evidence, you show them studies, and they will not let that go. That is driven into their brain that red meat is very bad for your kidneys. And I mean, I've heard doctors say people that are on carnivore have come off of dialysis. Well, that's strange. Why would you come off dialysis just eating a carnivore diet? I mean, that's got to be questioned, right? I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Here
And
you
there
go.
are studies showing that chronic kidney disease and other conditions of the kidney are helped by a higher protein intake. Of course, animal foods are number one in that regard. So
Yeah,
it's there are studies out there, and it's not just our opinion. It's what seems to be reality as well.
yeah. And if anyone looks up Professor Thomas Weems, WEIMBS, I think, he's done some work showing people who he has reversed their kidney disease through putting them on a keto diet. and I think carnivore as well. So there is definitely evidence of improving kidneys, absolutely 100% improving kidney function through being on a carnivore diet. And the evidence that was once used to create this idea that too much protein hurts the kidneys was never controlled experiments. It was an assumption that was made based on many other confounding factors being in the mix. So that evidence was one of the first things that I researched when I looked into carnivore. Was people said to me, you're going to affect your kidneys, and I could not find any actual studies which showed that. So it is one of those urban myths that has just taken hold. And so you'll know it. People wouldn't be able to reverse their kidney disease going on this diet if it was actually harming their kidneys. It makes no sense. So so yeah, any more to add on that?
I mean,
Yeah, and
protein
on
is the
top
main
of that
building
too,
block,
so
right?
sorry, Hugo, what was that?
Protein is the main building block of the body anyway. So
Yeah, amino
higher the
acids,
higher-
period.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing too about the kidneys, one of the other things that comes back at me is like eating red meat. So when I'm, different places or whatever, and I'm eating, it's the salt that I put on there. And that's another thing, how salt kills your kidneys. Because that's the three things we consume. We consume water, we consume salt to taste, and we consume meat. So now we're doubling down on what's killing our kidneys. What do you think about salt?
Someone want to take that?
I don't think you need to also just reference which salt it is, because when people think salt, a lot of people are thinking table salt. And I think when we talk about salt, we talk about mineral salt. So your sea salts, your Himalayans, your things that are actually getting mineral salt from. And that is not what damages your kidneys. That's what you need, are the building blocks, to create stomach acid, to create all these different, to help with hydration. So Himalayan salt is one of them, is essential for your minerals. You don't need to get all these fancy electrolytes and all these things that everybody's doing. That is your electrolyte. But when people think salt, I think a lot of people are thinking the normal iodized table salt that people talk about. So that's, for me, salt is incredibly important for mineral intake, for the building blocks in creating stomach acid. Your body needs your mineral salts to function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any more to say on kidney disease? Okay, I'll move us on to the last one, that red meat causes cancer. Just that little one at the end.
Just that little one.
That little topic, we can just, nail it in a second. So the argument is that if you were to eat a lot of red meat, it hangs around your bowels, it can cause bowel cancer. There has been some information put out mainly by, I guess, the WHO, who did a report saying that processed red meats can potentially cause cancer. So it is a very loose association, and it was specifically around processed meats. But that has been taken to mean many other things by people, and they assume that it must be an indicator for all red meat. So there isn't really any evidence to say that it does do that. And what there is very much epidemiological. What we've actually seen is some very promising information and studies that are being done on people, on humans, showing that when you put them onto a ketogenic diet, it really helps manage their cancer, because what you're doing is taking glucose out of the equation, and glucose is one of the fuels for cancer, as well as another amino acid. But it really does help in preventing the growth of cancer as a treatment, and that not necessarily to do with the cause, which is still unknown in many cases. So that's my quick minute on cancer. Kim?
Yeah, that's you summed it up, beautifully right there. Like, when they talk about processed meat, that's one of the biggest things that, one of the doctors out there brought up is that, what people, they say, oh, it's the oh my God, I'm going to lose it. It's in my head.
Nitrates?
That's nitrates. It's the nitrates that is in processed red meat. People don't realize that one of the biggest vegetables you can eat that is the highest in nitrates is spinach. And it doesn't even compare to a hot dog. Like, doesn't even come close, not even in the same ballpark. Like, we're talking 1 to maybe 100. Like, people, and because this has been demonized again over and over and over again. I mean, we have individuals out there that we talk to, and we watch and we follow, that have reversed their cancer on carnivore and keto, you know, and especially on carnivore when that's all you eat. And they eat, the only two things they eat is beef and lamb, water and salt. And guess what? They're going into remissions. There's been people that have remission as it's gone, completely gone. So, I mean, just another myth out there that's been demonized, and people just hung on to it and they won't let it go.
Thanks, Kim. Hugo?
Yes, this is a interesting topic. There are a lot of organizations like the WHO and others who've claimed that red meat causes cancer while having no evidence to back them up. If you look at those individual studies, they're poorly controlled. They're in, even the experimental ones are in animals, rodent studies, which are not humans. We can't directly compare different animals to humans. It doesn't work that way. We need to, you know, if we want to get actual evidence, we need to experiment on humans, which is not ethical, of course. But that's missing part. And what else? Epidemiological
I would volunteer.
Epidemiological studies are just questionnaires of people, you know, asking about their red meat intake. Who knows what they actually ate? You know, I don't. You know, when I was omnivore, I couldn't remember the foods I ate in an entire year, and that's how those questionnaires are done. So they're asking of your meat intake for the whole year, and just doesn't make any sense. Like if you have a pizza that has some red meat, you know, some salami or things like that, that can be classified as red meat as well by those epidemiological studies. So it is not valid science. It's not how, you know, the scientific method works, and there's no evidence to support that. There is evidence to actually show that it can help with cancer. You know, people on carnivore and ketogenic diets, as you point out, they've resolved their conditions, and if that was truly true that red meat causes cancer, they wouldn't have resolved those conditions. It's just impossible, right? But it has. It's a fact. It has happened.
Yeah. Thanks, Hugo. Yeah, and I think also, you know, people are because of this meat causes cancer idea, actually the irony is that when they do get cancer, they are hesitant to move to keto diet because that's more red meat. And so therefore they've got cancer. So it doesn't make sense to them. It just kind of throws everyone off. So it is really worrying that is out there. It's stopping people from really exploring the potential therapeutic aspects of a carnivore diet when they need it most. So yeah, any more comments on meat and cancer? Okay, I mean, I would just encourage people, if they know anyone with cancer, to just look up Professor Thomas Seyfried and Dr. Matt Phillips in New Zealand. They're doing some fantastic work. Professor Seyfried is doing a lot to actually look at the kind of on the academic side and the studies, and also Dr. Isabella Cooper in the UK is doing a lot of research on the ketogenic diet and cancer, and she's got some fantastic evidence for it as well. So we'll probably try and link some of those as well for people to have a look at. But yeah, those are all the myths for if you're going to do the carnivore diet and you've got any concerns, that hopefully will help people feel a little bit less concerned and embrace what is an absolute transformative way of eating for your health and for your longevity and for all of these prevention of all these chronic diseases that we're talking about and seeing so much of these days. Kim, you had a question?
Yeah, I you know, it's not a question. It's a question to all of us, and I know the answer, but I want you know, our audience to hear it as well. I'm 62 years old. I'm going to be 63 years old, and I want to ask you guys: would you ever go back to the diet you ate before carnivore? I'll answer first: never.
Definitely not. Hugo, Ash?
Sorry.
No. I've had a few slip ups like at Christmas time, and it made me feel awful. And no, this is for life. This isn't a short term thing. Like like it had like other things have been in the past where it's you just give up. If I have a slip the next day, I'm back straight on it again because that's where I feel best. So no, I won't be going back.
Hugo, thanks, Ash.
Uh, if it isn't obvious, it is part of my identity. So I'm never gonna stop carnivore. You know, maybe I'll experiment with some foods, but you know, this diet is at home, and I feel at home on this diet, and it's what works for me. I feel the best when I'm strictly eating red meat and salt. I do the strictest form, and that works for me. Sometimes I can eat other animal foods, and I'm fine with it, but I usually don't do it for a long period. It's just I just don't feel the best when I do that, especially with dairy. So
Yeah.
that's why I keep to a line diet, and I'm happy with it. There's
Yeah. And
I wouldn't say there's any a lot of people talk about fatigue, appetite fatigue. That's not what I have. It's like every time I make a steak or a piece of meat, it tastes great. It doesn't taste the exact same, and it's still amazing.
Hugo, when you post your pictures, how can it not? How could you ever get flavor fatigue? My goodness, you try everything. I mean, I want to go through the screen and eat your food because it just looks so amazing. And you know, on top of that too is like, even though you know everybody's going to have slip ups, I don't care who you are, you're going to have slip ups. You're going to have times that you're going to go back and you might eat a piece of cake, or you might eat this, or you might eat some fruit or whatever. That's okay. That's okay. You know, just get back up on the wagon when you're ready, but get back up on the wagon. And the more you get on it, the bigger that gap becomes, you know, because, you know, we're human. Listen, we're all human. And there will be times that everybody will fall off and they'll do this or they'll do that. And you know what? Nobody's going to judge you. We are not going to judge you. It's okay.
I was just going to say one more thing. I just think with this way of life, it's become I eat for nutrition. I don't eat for enjoyment, whereas not enjoyment, but fun. Whereas before it was you would go out and it was just you ate because like at a barbecue, you ate because the food was out. And it was just like I'll have this and I'll have that. And it was you would feel so full and sick because it wasn't really eating for nutrition and it was eating almost for entertainment, if you want to call it. Where now I eat for nutrition. And it's just like I don't see a lot of things as food. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, Ash. I'd agree. And I always hear that as well. Like we don't eat for enjoyment, but except I enjoy my food more than anyone
Yes.
I ever did before. So it's a little bit of a like it doesn't actually do it justice. It kind of belies how amazing it is. As Hugo said, you don't really get that bored of it. Sometimes you want to try
Yes.
and mix things up a bit, but overall, there's no other food I would choose to eat every single day for the rest of my life apart from a fatty steak. So, you know, and I love doing that every day. So it is it's almost like the best of the best. You feel amazing. You love what you're eating. All you've got to do is turn down some absolute junk that you don't need in your body and resist it. And that becomes a lot easier to do when you haven't been eating it for a while. And the benefits are endless in terms of for your health. So we hope that we have helped you feel a bit more inspired about doing the diet, but also alleviated any concerns today that you might have had. And any questions, just post them as well. And it's been great talking to everyone today. So see you on the next episode.
Bye.